Imagine a land where continents collide, a country so strategically positioned that it could tip the balance of world power at a single moment's notice. A nation that stood at the crossroads of empires, caught between the ancient worlds of East and West, where ideologies clashed and alliances were forged in the fires of war. Welcome to Turkey, the bridge between two worlds and a silent titan in both the world wars and the Cold War. From the blood-stained battlefields of Gallipoli to the icy standoff of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Turkey's role in history isn't just important, it's pivotal. But how did a nation, once a fading empire, become the cornerstone in the global struggle between superpowers? And what secret decisions made in the heart of Turkey changed the course of the 20th century? Tune in, because today we're uncovering the hidden story of how Turkey became the key that unlocked the East-West divide. Stay with us as we journey through time to reveal the extraordinary power of a country you thought you knew, but never truly understood. Long before Turkey emerged as the crossroads between East and West, it was the heart of one of history's most powerful empires. Stretching across continents and bridging cultures, the Ottoman Empire stood for more than 6 centuries, its influence reaching from the deserts of North Africa to the plains of Eastern Europe. But how did this empire, born in the 13th century, come to define the future of an entire region? Let's step back in time to where it all began. The year is 1299. A small Turkish tribe, led by the visionary Osman I, sets its sights on expanding into the weakening remnants of the Byzantine Empire. What begins as a modest settlement in northwestern Anatolia soon grows into one of the largest and most powerful empires the world has ever known. Strategically located at the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa, the Ottoman Empire had the ideal geography to control key trade routes, both land and sea. From the bustling markets of Baghdad to the golden streets of Cairo, the Ottomans connected vastly different worlds, the mystique of the East with the sophistication of the West. Istanbul, formerly Constantinople, became not just the capital of an empire, but a symbol of its might and ambition. Imagine this: a city straddling two continents, where the mighty Bosporus Strait divides Europe from Asia, where East meets West at every corner. A city that, for centuries, acted as the beating heart of politics, culture, and trade. Here, ancient cultures collided, and new ideas took shape, shaping the very fabric of the Mediterranean world. Whether you're trading silk from China, spices from India, or slaves from Africa, Istanbul was the gateway to it all. It became not just a political powerhouse, but a cultural hub where art, philosophy, and religion mixed in an unparalleled fusion, a place where both sultan and merchant could cross paths, where empires collided, and where ideas were exchanged freely. But no empire, no matter how mighty, can last forever. By the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was in decline. A once formidable power now crumbling from within. European colonial powers like Britain, France, and Russia began to expand their influence in regions the Ottomans had once ruled. Slowly but surely, the empire was being choked by the forces of modernity and imperial ambition. As Europe grew stronger and more technologically advanced, the Ottomans, entrenched in centuries-old ways, began to lose their grip on the territories that had once been the empire's lifeblood. The age of European colonial expansion further weakened the Ottomans, who struggled to defend their far-reaching territories. The old world was fading away, and in its place, new powers were rising. But it wasn't just external forces that weakened the Ottomans. Nationalism spread like wildfire across the empire's borders. From the Balkans to the Arab world, people began to demand independence, and in doing so, they tore the empire apart. National identities, once suppressed under Ottoman rule, now fought for their own sovereignty. The Ottoman Empire was now a shell of its former self, a fragmented land where rebellion and war had become commonplace. But even in its final years, it remained a pivotal player on the world stage, especially during the World Wars. By the time the World Wars arrived, the Ottoman Empire was often referred to as the sick man of Europe, a dying giant struggling to survive in an era of rapid change. Its role in World War I would prove to be its final act. As a part of the Central Powers alongside Germany and Austria-Hungary, the Ottomans tried to regain their lost prestige, but their efforts, like many things in those final years, were in vain. The Ottoman Empire, already weak and fractured, was unable to withstand the onslaught of the Allies. Its defeat sealed the fate of the empire, and with the signing of the Treaty of Sèvres in 1920, the world watched as the Ottomans were carved up by foreign powers. Yet in this moment of collapse, the seeds of a new nation were sown. Though the empire fell, a new vision emerged on the horizon, one that would soon become modern-day Turkey. And as the Ottoman Empire faded into history, it left behind a legacy that would bridge the ancient and the modern world. So, what happens when an empire falls, but its legacy refuses to die? What becomes of a land once ruled by sultans as it finds itself at the heart of a new Cold War-era world? The answer lies just ahead when we explore how Turkey became the strategic crossroads that shaped the Cold War, and how it would go on to play an even more critical role in the modern world. The year is 1914, and the world stands on the precipice of a conflict that will change the course of history. The Ottoman Empire, a once mighty force that spanned 3 continents, finds itself caught between the warring giants of Europe. As the drums of war echo across the continent, one question arises: can an empire on the brink of collapse survive the coming storm? At the dawn of World War I, the Ottoman Empire, weary and fractured, makes a fateful decision. They ally with the Central Powers, Germany and Austria-Hungary. It is a desperate bid for survival, a hope that by joining the rising powers of Europe, they can secure their empire's place in the New World Order. The Ottoman Empire, once a colossal force, now finds itself entwined in a brutal, global struggle. As the Central Powers prepare for war, The Ottomans are drawn into a conflict that will test their limits and seal their fate. One of the most brutal chapters of this war takes place on the shores of Gallipoli. The year is 1915, and the Allied forces launch a daring campaign to seize control of the Dardanelles and gain access to the heart of the Ottoman Empire. What follows is a fierce, bloody battle that will not only change the course of the war, but also reshape the future of Turkey itself. Gallipoli becomes a symbol of defiance for the Ottoman forces. Under the leadership of Mustafa Kemal, the future founder of modern Turkey, the Ottomans pushed back against the Allied invasion, inflicting a stunning defeat. But while Gallipoli proves the resilience of the Ottoman army, it also highlights the empire's struggle to keep pace with the technological and tactical innovations of the modern world. Though the Ottomans achieved a hard-fought victory at Gallipoli, the war is taking a toll. The empire's economy is crumbling. Internal strife is rising. The Ottoman Empire, already weakened by years of decline, can no longer hold its own against the overwhelming forces of the Allies. By the time the war finally ends in 1918, the Ottoman Empire is a shadow of its former self. The Central Powers are defeated, and the Ottomans, once a dominant force, are now left to reckon with their failure. The empire is divided, its lands carved up by victorious Allied powers. The fate of the Ottomans is sealed. The Treaty of Sèvres, signed in 1920, marks the official dismemberment of the empire. Istanbul, the once mighty capital, is no longer the political heart of a vast empire. It is now the last relic of a once great power, surrounded by the forces of foreign occupation. Parts of the empire are ceded to Britain, France, and other European powers. The Middle East is carved into mandates, and the land that once spanned from Europe to North Africa is now fragmented, its grandeur reduced to a memory. For many, the Ottoman Empire's fall is inevitable, a relic of a bygone age. But for some, it is a call to action, a chance to rise from the ashes and forge a new future. In the wake of this collapse, as foreign powers move in to claim the spoils, a new leader rises, one who will change the course of history forever. His name is Mustafa Kemal Atatürk. Atatürk leads a passionate resistance against the occupying forces. With remarkable skill, he unites the Turkish people and rallies them around the idea of independence. The Turkish War of Independence, fought from 1919 to 1923, becomes a battle not just for land, but for the very soul of Turkey. Atatürk's vision is clear: to forge a modern, secular, and independent nation, free from the remnants of its imperial past. Through a series of military and diplomatic victories, Atatürk and his forces drive out foreign invaders and reclaim control of the heart of Anatolia. The Treaty of Lausanne in 1923 solidifies Turkey's new borders, and with it, a new identity. The Ottoman Empire is gone, and in its place a new republic rises. On October 29, 1923, Mustafa Kemal Atatürk officially founds the Republic of Turkey, a break from the past, a bold step into the future. The Sultanate is abolished, the Caliphate is dissolved, and with sweeping reforms, Turkey transforms from a crumbling empire into a modern, secular republic. Ataturk's vision is realized, a nation that stands as the beacon of the future, bridging the divide between East and West. Amidst the ruins of an empire, a new dawn rises. Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the father of modern Turkey, stands at the helm of a nation on the verge of transformation. The Ottoman Empire is gone, and in its place a new republic is born, a nation poised between two worlds, East and West. But how does one reshape a country, create a national identity, and navigate a rapidly changing world? The answer lies in the radical vision of Ataturk. The year is 1923, and the Republic of Turkey has just been born. But this is no ordinary birth. It is the birth of a new vision, a vision of secularism, modernization, and westernization. Ataturk's reforms are nothing short of revolutionary. He knows that to secure Turkey's future, it must break free from the old world and embrace the future with open arms. One of Ataturk's most powerful moves is the abolition of the Caliphate in 1924, severing Turkey's connection to the religious leadership of the Muslim world. The state would no longer be ruled by religious decrees. Instead, Ataturk introduces a new, secular constitution. This was a monumental shift, the separation of religion from politics, which would forever change the fabric of Turkish society. Ataturk's vision didn't stop there. He turned to education and language, believing that a nation's identity must be rooted in knowledge and unity. He introduced sweeping educational reforms and overhauled the language by replacing the Arabic script with a Latin alphabet in 1928. For the first time in centuries, the Turkish people could read and write in a script that connected them to the Western world. Ataturk's reforms created a sense of national identity, one that was distinctly Turkish, but also progressive and forward-looking. The Turkish civil code, modeled after European legal systems, brought equality and modernization to Turkey's judicial system. Women were granted the right to vote, and public life began to reflect a blend of Turkish heritage and Western values. But despite the remarkable progress, Ataturk's vision came at a great cost. His radical transformation of Turkish society was not without opposition. For many, the rapid pace of change was jarring. But Ataturk, driven by the belief that Turkey must modernize to survive, pressed on, laying the foundation for a country that would stand on its own in the complex world of the 20th century. As the world spirals into World War II, Turkey, though surrounded by war, stands resolutely in a position of neutrality. The question on everyone's mind: would Turkey be swept into the chaos, or would it be able to maintain its delicate balance between East and West? Turkey's neutrality during the war is no accident. Ataturk, now past but whose legacy still guides the nation, had laid the groundwork for a policy of strategic neutrality. İsmet İnönü, Ataturk's successor, inherited this policy, and in the years following his leader's death, he would carefully navigate the country through the tumultuous years of global conflict. Despite pressure from both the Axis powers and the Allied forces, Turkey managed to stay out of the war for the most part. The nation's geographic position made it a pawn in the larger game, but Turkey's leadership understood the importance of waiting and observing. acting only when absolutely necessary. Turkey's neutrality wasn't a passive stance. Instead, it was a balancing act between the two warring factions. On one hand, Turkey maintained economic ties with Nazi Germany, receiving vital resources. On the other hand, Turkey provided strategic intelligence to the Allies, carefully positioning itself as a mediator rather than a participant. By the time the war nears its end, Turkey faces the question of what role it will play in the post-war world. The outcome of the war reshapes Europe, but Turkey's fate is still very much its own. As the war concludes, the nation must decide which alliances it will pursue in the New World Order. In the aftermath of World War II, Turkey finds itself at a crossroads. The world is divided, East versus West, under the looming shadow of the Cold War. The Soviet Union, once an ally in the fight against Hitler, now poses a new threat. Turkey's role in the post-war world will be crucial. Its location, straddling Europe and Asia, makes it a key player in the evolving struggle between the superpowers. In a dramatic shift from its neutrality, Turkey begins to gravitate toward the West. It enters NATO in 1952, aligning itself with the United States and Western Europe in the face of Soviet expansion. The Turkish Straits, long a point of geopolitical tension, become a focal point in the struggle for control of vital maritime routes. Turkey, once a fragmented empire, now stands as a critical buffer between the Soviet East and the Western world. Its strategic location has given it an unparalleled position of influence, bridging continents, cultures, and ideologies in an era of unprecedented tension. The year is 1945. The dust has barely settled from World War II, yet the world is already on the brink of a new, even more dangerous conflict. A war not fought with tanks or bullets, but with ideologies and alliances. The Cold War is about to begin, and at the center of this global standoff lies a country that bridges the worlds of the East and West. That country, Turkey. In the aftermath of the war, Turkey faces a fractured world. Its economy is in shambles. Political instability is rampant. As a nation, it stands at the crossroads of its future, caught between competing pressures, both from within and beyond its borders. The Soviet Union, now emerging as a superpower, turns its attention to Eastern Europe, casting its shadow over the Balkans and beyond. But that's not all. Soviet expansionism seems inevitable, and Turkey, strategically positioned at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, is suddenly in the crosshairs. Across the border, the Soviets push for influence. Communism is on the rise in the Eastern Bloc, and the Soviet Union looks to expand its reach. The Iron Curtain has descended, and Turkey, still recovering from war, is caught in a precarious position. The looming threat of Soviet expansion into Turkey could not only threaten the country's sovereignty, but also shift the balance of power in the Mediterranean and the Middle East. Enter the United States. The U.S. had been watching the Soviet threat grow across Europe and Asia, and with the spread of communism, Turkey's position became critical. In 1947, President Harry S. Truman announced a new doctrine, one that would shape the geopolitics of the Cold War. The Truman Doctrine would commit the United States to support any nation threatened by communism, and that included Turkey. The Truman Doctrine was not just a political statement. It was a lifeline for Turkey. The U.S. sent military and economic aid to prevent the Soviet Union from expanding into Turkey and the wider Middle East. In a region rich with resources and strategic importance, Turkey's stability became essential for the West. But it wasn't just the U.S. aid that mattered. It was Turkey's position at the very heart of the southern flank of NATO, guarding the Mediterranean and controlling the key access points between Europe and the Middle East. The Soviet Union had access to the north. Turkey held the gate to the south, and the West was determined to keep it locked. By 1952, Turkey's role as a frontline state in the Cold War is solidified. Turkey officially becomes a member of NATO, the military alliance created to counter Soviet aggression. This was no ordinary membership. It marked a strategic shift in the balance of power. As a NATO member, Turkey's military and geopolitical significance could not be overstated. With Soviet missiles pointed toward Europe from the east, Turkey became the first line of defense. It was the shield of the West, guarding against Soviet advances in the Mediterranean, the Middle East, and beyond. NATO's southern flank, strengthened by Turkey, was now prepared to stand against Soviet expansion, both in terms of military presence and strategic positioning. Turkey was no longer just a bystander. It was actively shaping the future of the Cold War, directly influencing the outcome of the global standoff. But the stakes would rise even higher. In 1962, the world teeters on the edge of nuclear war. The Cuban Missile Crisis, a confrontation between the U.S. and the Soviet Union over nuclear missiles placed in Cuba, takes center stage. But there's more to this story than the missiles in the Caribbean. Because as the Soviets placed their missiles in Cuba, the U.S. had already placed its own missiles in Turkey. Turkey's role in the Cuban Missile Crisis is crucial. The American missiles stationed in Turkey were a direct counter to Soviet missiles in Cuba. The proximity of these missiles, aimed straight at the Soviet heartland, created one of the most dangerous standoffs of the Cold War. For Turkey, it wasn't just a matter of being a passive host. It was a pivotal player in the broader geopolitical struggle between the U.S. and the USSR. The Cuban Missile Crisis may have been resolved without a nuclear conflict, but the missiles in Turkey remained a symbol of how Turkey's position in the Cold War was inseparable from the West's fight against Soviet expansion. While Turkey stood strong with NATO and the United States, the Soviet Union was never far behind, watching, waiting. The Soviets sought to influence Turkey, particularly over the Turkish Straits, the Bosporus and the Dardanelles, crucial waterways that connect the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. The Soviets saw these straits as vital to their maritime access, and they pressured Turkey for control. Turkey's refusal to yield to Soviet demands over the straits became a defining moment in Soviet-Turkish relations. The tension between the two countries over this issue persisted throughout the Cold War, symbolizing the ongoing rivalry between the Soviet East and the Western-aligned Turkey. Fast forward to the present day, and the world has changed dramatically. The Cold War is behind us, but the strategic importance of Turkey has only grown. Today, Turkey stands at the crossroads of modern geopolitics, a nation whose influence stretches across continents, whose decisions ripple through global markets, and whose ambitions continue to shape the East-West divide. From the Bosporus Strait to the battlefields of Syria and Libya, Turkey's foreign policy is as complex as its history. No longer just a passive player in the global order, Turkey is asserting itself as a regional leader, navigating tensions with old allies, seeking new partnerships, and facing new challenges that echo its past while redefining its future. Turkey's foreign policy today is defined by balance and ambition. For decades, Turkey has been a loyal NATO member, an anchor of stability for the West. But as the world shifts, so too does Turkey's role. Relations with the West, particularly the United States and European powers, have become increasingly strained. Political tensions, human rights concerns, and differing visions for the future have led to growing disillusionment within Turkey's leadership. Yet Turkey has not turned away from the West entirely. It still values its position within NATO and continues to be a key player in European security. But increasingly, Turkey has pursued its own course, driven by national interests and an ambition to lead in the region. Turkey's increasingly assertive foreign policy is felt in its dealings with both Russia and its neighbors. In Syria, Turkey has fought a long and complex battle against both ISIS and Kurdish groups, which it views as threats to its national security. It has intervened militarily, seeking to shape the region's future in its own image, reaffirming its role as a key player in the Middle East. Similarly, in Libya, Turkey's involvement in the civil conflict, providing military support to the internationally recognized government, has further cemented its reputation as a regional power willing to act decisively. But it's not just the Middle East where tensions rise. Turkey's relationship with Russia is one of both cooperation and competition, working together in some areas, like energy, but also clashing over conflicts like Syria. Turkey's ability to balance its relations with these two superpowers, both of whom hold vast influence, is a delicate diplomatic tightrope. Yet Turkey's power doesn't just lie in its military interventions or political maneuvering. Its geopolitical significance is also driven by its position as a key energy corridor. Imagine the oil and gas pipeline stretching from the Middle East to Europe, and Turkey stands at the center of it all. Turkey's control over the Bosporus Strait, one of the most crucial maritime passages in the world, has made it a critical node in global trade and energy. Every day, ships laden with goods pass through this narrow waterway, linking the Black Sea to the Mediterranean. In addition to being a trade route, the Bosporus is vital for the movement of energy supplies, positioning Turkey as an essential partner for both Europe's energy security and the global economy. Turkey's energy policy is equally ambitious. As the region's energy infrastructure grows, so does Turkey's role in shaping energy trade routes and securing supplies. The country is investing in energy projects that link the East with the West, serving as both a consumer and a transit hub, solidifying its role as an economic and strategic nexus in the 21st century. However, Turkey's journey into the modern geopolitical arena is far from without controversy. Beneath its assertive foreign policy, Turkey faces its own internal challenges: political instability, democratic backsliding, and growing authoritarianism. Turkey's political climate has changed dramatically in recent years. Under President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the country has seen a consolidation of power, with increasing restrictions on the press, civil liberties, and opposition forces. These shifts have sparked international concerns about the health of Turkish democracy, and its relationship with the European Union has become increasingly strained. Turkey's EU accession process, once a symbol of its ambition to integrate with the West, now seems stalled, with key hurdles over human rights, the rule of law, and political freedoms. The refugee crisis has only added complexity to the EU-Turkey relationship, as Turkey hosts millions of refugees from Syria and beyond. Wielding this issue as both a diplomatic tool and a moral burden. Despite these internal challenges, Turkey's role in NATO and its key position in global security cannot be overstated. The country's ability to manage tensions in the Middle East, its importance as an energy hub, and its strategic location between the East and West mean that Turkey will continue to be a powerful player on the world stage, for better or for worse. As we reflect on Turkey's journey through the turbulent waters of both world wars and the Cold War, we come to one undeniable conclusion. Turkey is not just a crossroads, it is the bridge between two worlds. From the rise of the Ottoman Empire, commanding the crossroads of Europe, Asia, and Africa, to its fall in the aftermath of World War I, Turkey has always existed at the nexus of global conflicts, ideas, and power. During World War II, it stood at the threshold of a divided world, walking the thin line between the Axis and Allied powers, preserving its sovereignty while the world teetered on the edge of annihilation. But it was during the Cold War that Turkey's role became crucial, a frontline state guarding the southern flank of NATO, holding the balance between the West's struggle against Soviet expansion and the growing influence of the East. Turkey's strategic position was more than just a matter of geography. It was a matter of survival. As the Cold War divided the world, Turkey found itself torn between two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, each vying for influence. A delicate balancing act was required. Turkey's military alliances, its role in NATO, and its crucial position in the Mediterranean gave it the power to shape the geopolitical landscape, even as it faced the complexities of its internal political struggles. But Turkey's legacy goes beyond military alliances and political maneuvering. It is a nation that has held the weight of history in its hands, a bridge between civilizations, connecting the ancient world with the modern. The conflict between East and West that once defined global politics is now a shifting web of alliances, economic interests, and regional power struggles. Yet Turkey remains at the heart of this puzzle, a key player in global trade, energy politics, and diplomatic negotiations. From the Bosporus Strait to the vast energy corridors that run through its lands, Turkey is not just a country, it's a symbol of the intersection of cultures, economies, and ideologies. It is a nation that has adapted, survived, and thrived by constantly balancing opposing forces, walking the tightrope between East and West, and navigating conflicts and opportunities in ways few nations can. Today, as we watch Turkey's evolving role on the world stage, its shifting alliances, internal challenges, and growing ambitions, it's clear that its legacy as a bridge between East and West is far from over. The future of Turkey will be shaped by its past, but it will also reshape the future itself, continuing to be a key player in the shifting sands of global geopolitics. Turkey, the crossroads of history, remains as important today as it has ever been. Its journey is ongoing, and as the world watches, we are left with one undeniable truth. Turkey will always be the bridge between East and West, and its legacy will echo through the corridors of time. And there you have it, the incredible journey of Turkey, a nation that has stood at the crossroads of history, bridging East and West through wars, ideologies, and alliances, a place where cultures and civilizations collide and where the past continues to shape the future. Thank you so much for joining us on this epic exploration of Turkey's pivotal role in the world. If you enjoyed this documentary, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another insightful story from the past. Your support means everything to us and motivates us to keep creating these jaw-dropping audio documentaries that bring history to life. Your voice matters. Share your thoughts in the comments below. How do you think Turkey will continue to influence global affairs in the years to come? We'd love to hear your perspectives and spark a conversation with you. Once again, thank you for listening. Your support fuels our passion for telling these stories. Until next time, keep seeking knowledge and keep wondering, what's next in the story of the world?